Ski Lodge, Creeper. My whole life I had been an avid skier. When I was younger, my parents had me compete and I was actually quite good. My parents had 4 kids including me, and I was the youngest girl, having 1 sister and 2 brothers. We live in Maine, so we get plenty of snow in the winter, and there's plenty of resorts local to us. I am now in my early 20s and in my final year of college. I go to school in-state, so for the past 3 years I have been working at a local ski resort giving lessons to small kids, during the winter of course. It is a fun job and has brought me much joy. But even a job as innocent as that can have its disadvantages. What I'm about to tell you happened last season at one of the training sessions with the kids. I was doing a session with 6 kids and the day was going well so far. This really wasn't a large group in particular, and all of the parents seemed to hang around and watch their kids that day. I don't have a problem with that, and it actually made me happy to see that they cared, because usually they would drop them off to me and then go have fun on the slopes. The kids always seemed to do better when their parents hung around and watched, and they had their support. There was this one dad there in particular who kept trying to get my attention, making jokes and trying to catch my gaze from time to time. I had a boyfriend that I cared for deeply, plus old creepy bald guys are not my type. When the lesson was over, I went up to the ski lodge to warm up and change out of my gear. That was my last lesson of the day, and I was ready to get home, plus I knew my cat probably was starving. I went into the changing area for ladies and began to get changed. It was a restroom area in there as well, so with all my gear off, I ran over to use the restroom basically in my underwear. Now, I'm in the stall doing my business. I hear the door to the locker room area open. I didn't think anything of it besides the fact that I had my stuff all over the floor, but then something happened that made my heart drop. The person had coughed, and it was clearly a guy. Holy crap, I thought. Did this guy get confused, or did he mean to walk into the ladies' area? I sat there silently as I listened for his every move. I heard my noisy snow pans being moved around on the floor, then the sound of my keys falling off the bench and hitting the floor. My phone was out there as well, so I had no chance of calling anyone. And confronting the jerk in my underwear didn't seem like a good idea either. My fears were starting to materialize right in front of me as I can hear the man starting to take deep inhales through his nose. Was this creep out there sniffing my clothes? It briefly went silent, and then footsteps could be heard coming back towards the restroom stalls where I was. It was only about 6 or so stalls, so he was for sure going to find me. The sound of the stall door right next to me swinging open with a bang almost made me scream and give up my location. This guy was now looking for me. He then opened the stall door next to that one with another crash echoing through the empty locker room. I was going to have to slip out from under the stall door and make a run for it, I remember thinking. I'm only 5'5" and like 126 pounds. I don't think I could put up much of a fight. Right when I was about to slip out and make a break for it, my stall door swung open violently, revealing the man to me. I yelled for him to get the F back, and he just looked at me with a weird smirk on his face. Then it hit me. This was the same guy who had been hitting on me earlier during my ski lessons with the kids. He took a step towards me, almost salivating seeing me in my underwear. Fear had taken over me. I found it hard to find my voice, wanting to let out a scream for my life. But suddenly, music to my ears. The sound of the rolly cart the janitors used could be heard entering the rest area. The guy realized what was happening as well, and he fled from the area as quick as he could. Immediately I started to sob, and the 2 cleaning ladies ran to check on me. I didn't have to say anything for the cleaning ladies to figure out what was happening. One of the ladies ran off to alert the security. I let the one that was with me know I was fine, and I hurried over to my stuff and got dressed. By the time I walked out of the locker room area, the resort security had the guy in cuffs, and he would soon be arrested by the local authorities. I didn't let that deter me, and I still do lessons at that same resort. But to the locker room creeper, let's not meet again. I'd like to start off by saying I have been living in Boston my whole life. I am also the type of person that does not get out often, so for the most part, I have only ever known the city and the surrounding areas. I met a girl earlier last year on Tinder, and we happened to hit it off right away. She and I hung out all summer, and that fall, we started to officially date. She was from New York City, Brooklyn to be exact. We had fun going back and forth about the Red Sox and the Yankees, which added a deeper element to our bond together. Everything in the relationship was going great so far. So with New Year's coming up, we decided we wanted to spend it together. We were still in the honeymoon stage, so nothing seemed better than ditching our friends and having a romantic getaway together. Now, Vermont is one of the states that is right above Massachusetts. A lot of you may already know that, but for the ones that don't, there you have it. Since she had never been up that way, and nor had I decided to rent a cabin at a ski resort for an extended weekend getaway. We couldn't help but to think about all the fun that we were going to have, and we were both excited to say the least. Since we would be arriving on the morning of New Year's Eve, I went to Boston Market the day before and got us a nice meal for that night. I had also hit the grocery store just to be sure that we would have all the food we would need for that weekend. I woke up early New Year's Eve morning around 4 a.m. I got everything ready and was at her place a little after 5 a.m. We got breakfast and hit the highway, excited for the adventure ahead of us. The drive was about 4 hours to the cabin, and I listened to podcasts while she slept in the passenger seat. We finally arrived at the cabin. The scenery was absolutely stunning. Immediately, I felt bad for not getting out and about a little sooner in life, being in my late 20s at this point. We pulled up out front of a nice newly renovated cabin. It had a wood welcome sign on the front door with a neat little black bear carved into it. My girlfriend, being the nature lover that she is, she admires the sign as I put in the key code to get into the place. Once inside, we had a look around, and the place had a very nice and cozy vibe, but for the price I was paying for the weekend, I would not expect anything less. We started to unload the car and bring the food and the luggage inside. We went out for a day of skiing after that. And when we got back, we showered, took a nap, and then got up and prepared dinner. This place had all the amenities, so we were able to warm up the food and also cook a little, no problem. The giant wood-burning fireplace kept things nice and toasty in the main living and dining space. So while cooking, my girl decided to crack a window, just to let a little bit of the heat out. Everything was ready to eat, so we sat down at the table and had a nice candlelit dinner. The food turned out to be great, and after that we talked and laughed and just enjoyed each other's company. We went to the bedroom for a bit of fun before falling asleep. We were going to stay up to watch the ball drop, but with all the action from that day, there was not a chance. There's something about someone screaming bloody murder while you're asleep that wakes you up in the most gut-wrenching of ways. Frantically jumping up, I called out for my girlfriend. Before I knew it, she was flying through the threshold of the door, slamming it behind her. She looks me dead in the eyes and says, "There's a bear currently breaking into our cabin." Right when she said that, you can hear glass shattering violently in the background. I went to the door and pressed my ear to it. I could hear snarling and huffing coming from the beast. I got ballsy and looked out the door. We had cut the lights off before heading into the bedroom, so it was dark as hell out in the main living space. But the light from the embers in the fireplace gave off just enough light for me to see a giant black bear trying to crawl through the kitchen window, but it had not yet made it all the way in. How could this be happening right now? Then it all hit me. Caught in the festivities earlier, we forgot to put the food away. Our whole spread was still out on the dining room table. Also, we never closed the window from when we were cooking earlier. We basically gave a signal to all the local wildlife to come and get it. I feel very stupid now looking back on it all, but like I said earlier, this was a new experience for me and not getting out the city much before. So I know, rookie mistake. I tried yelling and making myself look big, but it still seemed to be pretty persistent on coming in. I told her to hurry and get dressed as I looked around on the floor for my clothes. There was a window in my room which led out to the parking area. Luckily, I had my car keys in the room with me, so I helped her out of the window with me following up behind her. We hopped in my car and I immediately started it and cut the heat on. We were half dressed and it was probably about 30 degrees out. I drove around to the side of the house where the bear was stuck in the window and held onto my car horn for at least a minute straight. That startled the heck out of that bear, and it finally pulled itself from the window and ran back off into the woods. We were both shaken to the core and did not want to go back into the cabin that night. We decided to just sleep in the car with it running so that we could stay warm. I sent the email to the resort letting them know what had happened that night as we sat in the car trying to come down from the adrenaline high. That's when she first told me how she encountered the bear. Before she had screamed and awoke me, she was on her way to the restroom when she noticed a dark shadow lingering around outside the kitchen window. We did eventually crash to be awoken by the sunrise a few hours later. The site manager from the resort pulled up a little after 7 a.m. and we all walked back inside the cabin together. He paced around the scene slowly, analyzing everything carefully. He then began to chastise us for leaving food out and the window open in the first place. We gave him our sincerest apologies, letting him know that this lifestyle was new to us. We even offered to pay for the window. He declined our offer and said that he would have it fixed by that evening. We decided to check out the nearby small town that day, visit a few shops, and maybe have a little dinner. It was nice because it helped take our minds off of the wild night before. By the time we got back into the cabin, everything was fixed and good as new. The first night sleeping in there again was pretty nerve-wracking, but nothing ended up happening. The rest of the weekend went off without a hitch. Me and that particular young lady do not date anymore. We had some differences and decided to go our separate ways. But at least we share the memory of almost getting robbed and maybe even mauled by a bear. To start this off, I am not a winter sports person by any means, nor do I claim to be. I've been a few times with family and friends, but that would be the extent of my experience. I had an ex-girlfriend who at the time when we were dating liked to test me in many ways. Some good, some not so good. Random ski trip when we were on vacation in Japan? I'll let you be the judge of that. This all took place a few years ago when we were still dating. She used to travel a lot, doing cool humanitarian things around the world, and I for the most part stayed local and worked a normal job. She and I both had vacation time that we needed to take before the year was out, so she made a suggestion that we go to Japan for a week or so. Being a huge anime fan, I could not help but to become excited. It even overshadowed all the possible arguments we would probably have just existing around each other for that long of an uninterrupted time. I agreed to go, and she took care of all the planning and travel accommodations. The time came and we boarded our flight to the land of the rising sun. Other than the flight being horribly long, it was otherwise non-eventful. We would be staying in 3 different locations over the week that we would be visiting there. The first being in Tokyo, one being in the countryside where a friend of hers lived from college. Our last residency would be in a ski lodge in the snow-covered mountains to the north. I did not know she had planned a ski trip, but whatever, I was already there. What could go wrong? The first few days went by fast, much faster than one would like when being in such a cool place. The people, the culture, the food, all was so much more than I could ever hope for. Friday night rolled around and we took the 6-hour bus ride to the ski resort where we would be staying at that weekend. The bus traveled through the night, so we arrived early Saturday morning. The scenery was amazing and also intimidating. We got checked in and headed back to our room where we would get some much needed rest before hitting the slopes. After waking up and getting dressed, we went down to the rental station to get all of our equipment. She got skis and I went for the snowboard. I had never really snowboarded before, but I had picked up longboarding a few months prior, so I figured it could not have been too much of a difference. Now, being fully equipped, we made our way to where the ski lifts were. There was a map that showed all the different slopes you could take, but obviously everything was in Japanese, so it didn't make it easy. It didn't help that the colors that were used to mark the trails were not your normal red for hardest, green for easiest type of deal. Instead, black, purple, orange, and yellow was what was in front of us. So we decided to take the black route, which seemed to be the most mild out of the bunch. We hopped on the ski lift, which took us up the mountain, giving us a supreme view of the resort. The snow was starting to come down a good bit, which added to the amazing backdrop. Taking in all the sights around me, I did not realize one very important thing. We had rode the lift very high up the mountain, basically to the top. We dropped off the lift at the summit of the mountain. It was around dusk, and there was not a soul in sight. Not to mention at the top of the mountain, the snow was falling quite heavily. "I think we messed up," I yelled out over the harsh winds. I could tell she was nervous, not being the most proficient skier herself, but we had no choice. We started to try and make our way down the mountain. I quickly learned my longboard skills did not equate to snowboard skills. I would pick up speed rapidly, then fall onto my butt, repeatedly. The snow was falling so hard that within minutes I lost sight of my girlfriend. I called out for her, but nothing could be heard but the wind and the snow pelting my helmet. I didn't want to risk distancing us more, so I unclipped myself from my board and began to walk along the edge of the slopes nearest to the tree line. That was the only place where the snow was not up to my knees. I was now in whiteout conditions, the likes of those that I had never been a part of before. Besides, we don't get much snow back in Southern California. I was becoming dangerously cold, and my girlfriend was still nowhere to be found. I kept a slow pace down the side of the mountain in hopes that I would see her ride past. But after about 30 minutes of that not happening, I started to think maybe I was the one that had fell behind and she had been past me in the dense snowfall. The slope that we had chosen to take had not been the easiest one at all. This one was by far the steepest. Just when I was starting to lose hope, I can hear my name being called ever so faintly in the distance. I turned around, trying my best to clear the snow from my goggles, to see where it was coming from. Like a fuzzy picture becoming clearer by the second, my girlfriend could be seen emerging from the frozen tundra, sitting and riding on her skis like some sort of sled. I called back to her, and she coasted over to where I was. She was crying and all shaken up, thinking that she had lost me for good on that mountain. I assured her I was fine and just a little frozen, then we carried on down the mountain. After about 15 to 20 minutes of walking, the lights of the resort dimly came back into view. I had never been so happy to see civilization in my life. Eventually we made it back inside the lodge where it was now packed unlike before. When we came in all snowy with our gear, we were getting a lot of weird stares. When we went to return the gear, the clerk asked what had we been doing. I looked at him with a dumbfounded look on my face because we were literally turning in our gear. How could he ask such a thing? I stated the obvious that we had just come in from hitting the slopes, and he had a very shocked look about him. "What?" I asked. The mountain has been closed for the last couple of hours due to the storm that rolled in. Being up there in these conditions could be a death sentence. My girlfriend and I looked at each other with looks of terror as we made our way to our room. I definitely felt a sense of impending doom, she said. We had a laugh, showered, and was back on a plane to California that next morning. Spooky Moose here. I'd like to thank you all for listening tonight, and we'll have more stories coming for you soon. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.